Sage Wonder, and welcome to Coffee Talk. That's right, it's time for another Coffee Talk. Check out my mug. He's peeking at you right there. It's the elf. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Hope you guys had a great Christmas. And happy holidays, Kwanzaa. Well, what's all of the different ones? Kwanzaa just always sticks out. Just sounds funny. Kwanzaa. Happy Hanukkah for your Coffee Talk. So, whatever you're celebrating, even if it's just celebrating having some extra money, thank you, Trump. But today we're going to be talking about the Illuminati. The illuminated ones. They're illuminated and they're naughty. They're Illuminazis. So when did I first hear about the Illuminati? Well, I gotta say, I was hip to the Illuminati by good old Uncle Fred. Uncle Fred was quite a character. Uncle Fred was a Navy veteran from World War II who'd been a gunner on a battleship, anti-aircraft gunner on a battleship, I believe was his story. A lot of those guys didn't talk in too much detail about all the blood and gore they saw. You just knew if they were there and they were behind a gun in World War II, they saw some battle, and he did. He was kind of famously plucked out of the ocean after the ship he was on was either badly damaged or sunk, and he ended up in the ocean, and they pulled him out after 22 hours, I think he said. 22 hours in the water. When they pulled him out, he was all covered in diesel fuel and oil because it's, floating on top of the water, and thank goodness his section did not catch on fire, but other guys were not so lucky. So I had a great respect for Uncle Fred. He was definitely one of those great American heroes. And I guess he started paying attention to mentoring me a little bit when my wife became with child, and it looked like I was going to be a parent. And so he kind of took me under his wing a little bit. My parents were living in another state, and my wife's parents had both passed away by then. And so Uncle Fred kind of grandfathered us a little bit during that period of time. And part of that was explaining to me how I was bringing children into the world that was controlled by the evil Illuminati who were trying to bring about the New World Order. Now, back then, there was no internet. And back then, people learned about this kind of stuff by passing around bootleg VHS videos that were often copies of Coffee Talk. Coffee? Ah, the elf is peering at you right there. Ah. Okay, so, yeah, it was a lot harder to figure out, what was actually going on in the New World Order then. There wasn't no QAnon. There was no big, you couldn't go on a multi-hour binge on the Illuminati on YouTube. And you kind of had to take the information a piece at a time. So it was a lot of reading of books, a lot of watching of these grainy videos talking about conspiracies, going all the way back. Now, one thing that old Uncle Fred was very concerned about was the Masonic theories and the Masonic temple and all of the Freemasonry around the world. And he saw that as the core of the Illuminati. And he was very suspect. And of course, for him too, it was all about the Catholic Church, because Uncle Fred was a Seventh-day Adventist. And they believed that in the end times, that when they bring about this New World Order, they were going to bring about a new one-world religion ran by the evil Pope. And that they were going to force everyone to go to church on Sundays only. And therefore, all of the Seventh-day Adventist people would have their head chopped off for not going to church on Sunday, because everybody knows a Seventh-day Adventist would rather die than go to church on Sunday. And so that was a big part of what that was for Uncle Fred, was about, the Pope as well. But what Uncle Fred didn't know is that I already had some information and some knowledge of Freemasonry that Uncle Fred never knew, and I never told him, that I had actually been inside of Freemason's temple in Arlington, Texas. They have a huge compound there. It's many, many acres. And I was dating a girl who was her mother was an Eastern Star. And what do they call the girls? The girls were something girls. I don't know. It's kind of like, I just thought it was like Cub Scouts, but, for rich people. I do know that the boys were called the Demolays. And Rainbow Girls. The girls were called Rainbow Girls. Interesting. Rainbow Girls, the boys were Demolays, the women were Eastern Star, and the men were Masons. And they all had their separate groups, and they all did their own little thing together. And I never could get my Rainbow Girl friend or her mother, the Eastern Star, who later on would become a very close friend of mine. And I could never get either one of them to really tell me the secrets of the Illuminati or what they were doing there in their groups. But I did go, I think it was, there was some special Sweet 16 ceremony for my girlfriend when she turned 16 in the Rainbow Girls. And so I went there, got on my little tie and went. And I was kind of already out from underneath my parents' control, so they were unaware I was attending a Freemasonry ceremony, apparently. But for me, it just seemed like church, only more boring. I came from a Pentecostal church. We had a lot more fun than whatever it was they did there. They banged their gavels. They said some things in Latin. They, I don't know, put a rainbow medallion around her neck. And I guess pronounced her a woman. I don't know. And we had biscuits and, like the little cheap, sucky sandwich cookies, the lady finger things that I hated. And tea. And, yeah, I couldn't wait to get out of there. So, after Uncle Fred and I kind of quit hanging out there, he got sick and old, and, you know, I continued my, look into the Illuminati. And I started in present day and went backwards in time. And rather than trying to go backwards in time and find the root and work forward, instead I started with what I knew right then, which was the Freemasons. I started with them. I looked at the Council on Foreign Relations. They were said to be part of it. I looked very closely at people like David Rockefeller, and I studied royalty and how they were also connected into this. And I studied the papal connections and worked my way backwards in time. And one thing I found in the 19th century to be really interesting, which deserves its own coffee talk, was a religion called Theosophy, which I think is at the center core of what we now call the New World Order, Illuminati, cult, or the Cabal. This is the part of the religion of the Cabal. And it is based in Gnosticism, which is almost like taking Christianity or Judeo-Christian beliefs and flipping them. So it makes the devil the good guy. The devil was trying to give us technology, and the devil was trying to give us fire, and the devil was trying to give us freedom in the Garden of Eden to get us away from the God of the Old Testament, which they see as being kind of a selfish. I won't get into it because it twists your melon and it scares a lot of people. But I have studied the various sorts of this kind of flip of Christianity, as it were, in the form of Gnosticism. And there is a good form of Gnosticism too that I also study, which I'll talk about at some point. But I digress. So the Illuminati really, for me, is a name associated with the Bavarian family who built this organization. And, the study on that is kind of short. There's very little known about the Illuminati. Some of the highlights are in the Dan Brown book and movie. And these people were said to have kind of disappeared after a short-lived time and have been gone now for a couple hundred years at least. But here's what I think. When I say the Illuminati or the Cabal, here's the history as I see it. So instead of taking you back in time in the way that I studied it, let's just start from the beginning. So in Freemasonry, part of their ceremonial system, it revolves around this Egyptian mason who's said to have been the master mason who built the pyramids. And that's what they relate to. But really, I think that this is Mystery Babylon religion. It's a religion and an ideology and a concept that is closely related to many Middle Eastern demonic gods like Moloch. And there is connections to this Middle Eastern cult that, to the very beginnings of the Illuminati, as we would know it, or the Cabal. Let's just start calling it the Cabal. So it really goes to the Knights Templars, if you ask me. Now, the Knights Templars invented the banking system. The Knights Templars survivors, many believe, founded Switzerland and the Swiss banking system. That before there were Knights Templars, there was no banking system. And the banking system was invented by the Knights Templars to get people from Europe to the Holy Land without them being robbed along the way. So you would deposit money with the Templars in Europe, then you would travel with no money, therefore you couldn't be robbed or couldn't be stolen from. And Knights Templars would defend and protect you along the route. When you got to the other end, they would give you money from Jerusalem that was already being stored there, and market paid as in the money you deposited in Europe, you got it. And then whatever was left over, you gave back to them there, and you picked up when you got back to Europe. So that's the invention of the banking system. Many believe that the Knights Templars were searching for things like the Holy Grail, the True Cross, the Spear of Destiny, and that they had excavations underneath the Temple Mound in Jerusalem and in places like Christ's tomb and the place like the Hill of Golgotha, where Christ was rumored to be crucified, that they did excavations during that period of time in Jerusalem. We're talking about the period of the Crusades, where Jerusalem was for a period of time under control of the Christians, particularly the Knights Templars. The Knights Templars become extremely powerful and rich because of their work in the Middle East and in the Far East. And they become a threat to the papacy. So the Pope declares them an evil demonic organization, accuses them of rituals that involve sodomy and child abuse and human sacrifice and witchcraft, and sets out to seize all of their assets and capture all of their key holdings and castles, and basically spread them to the four corners of the earth, which he did successfully do. And Jacques de Molay was burned at the stake. He was the head of the Illuminati. But most of the riches, the gold, was never found in the artifacts. And this, leads to the big theory of the Illuminati gold, which is supposed to be hidden somewhere, all of this wealth of ancient riches that come from Solomon's temple, the richest man in the history of the world. Solomon said to have had quite a treasury, as it were, that was found and gathered back together by the Knights Templars, the founders then of the Illuminati. What ends up happening is the survivors go to Switzerland. The survivors of the Knights Templars go to Switzerland and begin the banking system there. Also, they don't invent Freemasonry. Freemasonry was just a Mason's guild, the Bricklayers Union, essentially, and that these Knights Templars have taken over the Masonry guild, just the union, essentially, and turned it into a secret underground society with secret handshakes and secret ceremonies, and everyone is all connected. And so this could really is just as easily been titled Freemasonry, and I may put Freemasonry and Illuminati in the title. But the Knights Templars, I think, are at the foundation of all of these belief systems. Many believe that the Knights Templars were corrupted at their time in the Middle East. They discovered all of these demonic gods, and they started doing these demonic things, and they picked up this demonic religion, which I've talked about in past episodes, which revolves around Moloch, and that they're sacrificing children, and there's even cannibalism, which is part of their rituals. These are all things that they were accused of by the Roman Catholic Pope, who might very well have made it all up just to go after their money. But this idea has persisted down through time, has morphed into the Illuminati as we know it, or now it's being called the Cabal. The concept is these people have been trying to infiltrate and secretly run the governments of the world for generations and have had measured success on various levels, infiltrating the various governments and controlling things, creating wars for economic reasons, false flag attacks where they like blow things up or do something bad for their own purposes, blame it on someone else to manipulate society, to make more wars, to make more money. Then you've got the whole war machine that is the industrial military complex, and how that is working hand in hand, or had been until recently, with the Illuminati, and they were heading us all towards a deeper level of slavery. Television was invented to enslave us, to give us opium for the modern day, make us all fat, happy, and controllable while we go to work and earn for them as good slaves. It all sounds pretty interesting. Bottom line is, in America at least, with the freedoms that we have, it's pretty easy to ignore all of this, these cards that are stacked against you. It's pretty easy to glom onto freedom, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, apply yourself in a good, strong American economy and overcome all of this and have it really not be an issue for you. You don't feel enslaved. I don't really feel enslaved until April 15th. Then you start to realize you do in fact have a collar and a chain. But at any rate, this is my take on the Illuminati. This could have been 3 or 4 coffee talks, because this was a long one. My coffee's getting cold. How about you? The elf has been keeping it warm for me. Do we look alike? I don't know. Okay. So, yeah, the Illuminati. Tell me what you think. Do you believe in it? I had to do a coffee talk because I don't buy all of it. It's interesting history. There's a lot to it. A lot of people talk about it. Tell me what you think. Are we being controlled? Have we always been controlled? Is every election rigged? Is Donald Trump part of the Illuminati? That's the next video. God save our republic.